Today we're going to present the PPP for drinking water services. I am Rafid Manatu Amede, advisor in PPP in the wash sector, and our sharing for today is to share with you what has been developed with the projects and the wash sector in Madagascar and everything pertinent in the development of models, wash models, specifically on PPP, but also to better proceed to the transition of the project with the different actors of the sector, be it private or public sector, through the sharing this week. For your information, the components on the engagement of the private sector, we're going to have 4 sharings. It's always during this second session in the afternoon. We're going to have presentation of the governance side, and we also have the presentation on the engagement commitment of the private sector. And tomorrow we're going to present the components on private sector commitments, more on the marketing and entrepreneurship, but based on a different theme than today. On the third day, we're going to have sharing on specifically infrastructures adapted to climate hazards. And the fourth and last day, we're going to have sharing on market-based approach, more specifically on sanitation. For me, we're going to share with you 80% tools that are implementation tools, and 20% of the sharing would be focused on key framework reference documents for the sector, more especially for those for the 10% of the shared tools. Is focused on the modules, training modules, and research results, application. So, Runwash is a project which aim is to promote equitable and sustainable access to drinking water, to impact on health and nutrition and protection of the environment. And this project is intervening into 250 communes, rural communes in 6 regions before the separation of the Vatvav and Fitfnani regions, which is now then become 7 regions: Vatfnani, Fitfnani, Atsinanana, Amurumania, Otomatsatra, Vakanakalacha, and Alotramangur. The project is funded by USAID for 5 years, June 2017 and June 2023, and implemented by a consortium within Care, Serious Water Aid, Bushproof, and Sandanjan. Better understand my presentation on the learning and the sharing of best practices. The presentation will be divided into 3 parts. The why of our intervention is grouped in 3 parts: the how, of the presentation, which is followed by the tools elaborated in the frame of this project. So this is the articulation of our presentation. So the why of our intervention is briefly 80% of the drinking water services and within some years of existence are not well managed and adopted by different actors and followed by the understanding of the texts and rapid institutional diagnosis. However, the Code of Water has existed for many years, 20 years, and the application was postponed for many years. In 2004, the Code of Public Market is not allowing the market, the private public commitment and the other measures of the sector. And then the regulatory framework is existing. We have to improve, readjust those texts, and more especially for the different actors, the mayor and the private sector. Unfortunately, the wash sector was not perceived as a potential domain of investment, private sector investments, and however some investments of the private sector occurred before laws on PPP and laws on the Code of Water, but nobody took this seriously. So the demand is present, the offer is non-existent, and domain of intervention is large. The proof is we have figures. We can see it on the presentation. 70% of the rural population in our 6 regions of interventions before the separation of the 2 last regions, Ranwash, does not have access, those populations do not have access to drinking water, and yet they are representing 100,000 of investment. And at that time, the rural population is paying the 10 to 50% of the drinking water for non-drinking water from regions and traditional borehole and water available for over than 100 meters from their households and in the general functioning of the wash sector in Madagascar. According to TRACFIN Madagascar 2013 and 2015, the willingness of payment is so low, and to address SDG number 6 for 2023, which is water and sanitation for all Madagascar, need at least $2 billion USD of investment to up to $180 million per year in the management, investment, and the exploitation. We established a manager, investor, and constructor who are responsible. Operators who can put in place investment program and ensuring the coverage of the market linked and managers practicing providing services and conscience with the importance and the necessity of gaining monthly profits within the proximity territories. On the other words, within Ranwash, we could leave some traces on the tools, all the tools that were used to implement the projects that are available to you, and for those documents, I'd like to draw your attention that it is important for us to understand, if we want the documents available, or when you receive the presentation, you can download it via the website, and the shared documents are all available via the links present in the text and can be presented one by one. As you can see here, we have 4 tools shared, available in this QR code, available just here. And similarly, for the enterprises section, you have the QR code. You can scan directly to get the URL and the links used to have access to those tools. If you want to receive the tools, you can copy paste those links maybe in your telephone. You can scan the QR code so that you can read calmly at home and check one by one the links for your archives and capitalization of the tools. So, as you know, Ranwash is using a market-based approach, and the agreement approach is important, and more especially in the communes who are beneficiaries of our interventions, but also to highlight an environment, a favorable environment for the intervention of the private sector in those communes. So for the selection of the communes, we elaborated some tools to be used for those communes of interventions. We have 2 categories of communes. We have the communes who would be the communes of interventions at the number of 250. You can have a look at this link, and the process for the selection of those communes is available on tool number 1. The second category of communes is access to those who are going to receive the infrastructures of water supply. We have the necessary criteria in the construction of those infrastructures, and mainly that is responding to the pertinence of business for future projects with the private sector, but also, strategically speaking, this is linked with vulnerable people, or strategically allowing the private sector to cover the territories in the premises of the zone of implementation of those infrastructures. Now, I'd like to take an example of tools that we're going to view together, like tool number 3. Here we have the criteria brought on the table by the project to select the communes receiving beneficiaries of the constructions of the water supply system, which is of three types. We have three types of infrastructures. Number one is a big system, which is an infrastructure which has the capacity to provide the access to more than 4,000 beneficiaries. And the second type is the S2, or the type of medium infrastructure to provide access between 2,000 and 4,000 beneficiaries. And the minimum of system constructed by RANWASH is S3, which is provided to provide services to under 2,000 beneficiaries. Here we go. And the second part is on the criteria of selection or documentation for us to be able to select the enterprises who are ready to invest in the wash sector. And now I'm going to share with you the approaches adopted by RANWASH, which is the GIC offer, manager, investor, and constructor. And this practice was drawn from the members of the consortium's experience, but also the experience from the 80% of infrastructures which are devoted to disappear within 3 years time because of the bad management of those infrastructures. And that's why we created the manager, investor, and the constructor approach to bring investment. They are going to build the infrastructures and then manage the constructed system. And then, for that sake, RANWASH was convinced that they would be more responsible under a contract of constructions without considering the other types of constructions. Today, the tender would be shared with this link, or you can download it via the QA code and all the documents which are available here. For example, here we have the tender during the COVID-19 periods. We all know that there will always be health issues like the COVID-19, and for that we adapted our methodology based on the challenges we encountered. We had the resources, the means to submit those tenders within the private sectors without moving, and this is a way for the enterprises to submit their documents online, provide online information session standards to receive those documents submitted online. And it was our methodology during the COVID-19 in 2019, and this is applicable in those kinds of situations during the exercises of the project. Now, within the section related to enterprises, you can have models of letter of submission, the instruction to those submissions, and the call for interests, and more especially those technical and financial partners based on the PPP and the GIC model proposed by Ranmash. And we have that code of conduct of zero tolerance for corruption and all types of those behaviors. We also have the harmonized DAO for Ranmash to harmonize the interaction of the project, and so that we can harmonize the different enterprises based on the same criteria, same approach in the 7 regions of intervention of the project, so that all the submissions would be harmonized and to better coordinate the activities with the team in place. Even though it's sometimes evaluated as heavy submissions, and we can also share the register of the 91 enterprises that were interested. You can consult that list via this link that I just clicked. You can see their mail address and you can contact them. We have their contacts, mail address, and everything related to those enterprises. You can contact them in need and eventually work with them depending on the availability of the market. And regarding the evaluation of the wash market in the 6 regions, some activities were provided by the projects to provide the consortium of the projects needed information to have some to work on strategic orientation. You can click on the links that are shared with you, but here you will receive the 3 first documents for the result of the research on the evaluation of the market conducted by Ranmash project. And for that, for the 3 first documents can be downloaded with the QR code, and those documents are quite long documents, so you have the rights to download those documents via the link provided to you. You can use your smartphone, your computer, whatever the type of telephone you're using, you can download it. And the 3 next tools are available via this QR code in the middle, which is a complete evaluation of the market in the region of Atsinana na Jamangur, Vatvavi, Fitfnani, and we have the 2 last documents, which is the business plan model for the manager, investor, and constructor working with the project, putting in practice the forecasting of financial turnouts chosen by the private sector. And this model is highlighting the model used by the projects for the types of business plan to evaluate market opportunities in the targeted site by the private sector. And last but not least, for the evaluation of the market, we have the chronology. The information on the chronology of the PPP model, WASH PPP model in Madagascar, to enable us to be in the knowing of the public-private intervention in Madagascar, but also to enable us to draw lessons learned for future interventions, to well address interventions within the project. For us to have a strategic orientation which is more specific in the elaboration of a planification document within the regions and the market by the project. Why is this important? This is important because we need to address priority questions by creating markets to solve and provide business model for the private sector, and to give ideas and orientation in the preparation of the market that can accelerate the local economical objectives. And this is available with the link I shared with you earlier. The document here is a document of thick pages, allowing us to have a look at those strategies. We have more than 10 types of markets with their business model, which are ready to be exploited with experts to develop some businesses, and enabling us to work out local challenges in the WASH sector, and more especially in relation with local challenges. For example, here we can open this file. We have a market development plan for Atsinanana region, and presenting 17 types of market within this document. And it is composed of necessary information and the type of business model to develop an important market, or on sanitation, hygiene in the different regions of intervention, common regions of interventions similar to Atsinanana. And based on our experience, this document can be used in different regions, because in Madagascar we have almost the same challenges related to WASH sector, and that's to say that this document can be commonly used by other regions. We did not just remain on studies, market studies, preliminary market studies, and development plan of regional markets. We can deepen a little bit into different types of studies before the projects to provide us specific information in the frame of implementation of the project, and the covering of the water supply system of the communes. And those information can provide us specific elements to supply water and in sanitation in a potential commune and its premises, and in conformity with the prior projects studies is also redirected to these private and public collaboration touching administrative, environmental, financial, and judiciary aspects in the implementation of this project for the water, sanitation, and hygiene services provided. And here you can have the details centered to the before projects and detailed studies results that you can download via this QR code. You can observe the different types of regions, the 83 APD available here. So these documents, one of these documents is about 250 pages thick, depending on your choices or depending on the choices of the communes that you judge essential. And some of those communes where we carried out those APD were done in the frame of this project, but the others are still on process. For a more responsible conception and integrated, depending based on the presentation by Rodolphe, we have a system applied by the project, and that's the reason why we applied the validation of the studies on environmental studies, which is part of the building block, depending on the ecosystem, and which is mainstreamed in this responsible approach. And for the security of the investment, it is necessary to go through the donors, some specialists, and the validation of those specialists and the mitigation of environmental aspects containing one or many constatations depending based on negative incidents, which are totally possible, and the analysis and the validation of those analyses is very important, and that is presenting a protection to the implemented activities, and this is validating the activities to move forward. And so those documents are providing us with models for the development of our future ESF, and specific elements, informations that are developed by specialists on environmental impact mitigation from the implementation of infrastructures of different types by RANWASH. So here are 50 documents implemented by the projects respecting the environment during the life cycle of the project. And you may have time to appreciate, to read calmly at home those documents by clicking on the links in the same way I showed to you. The first document is representing the 50 documents validated ESF by the project, and this is the QR code related to that, and the other 50 ESF documents that you can download via this QR code below. To work on the engagement of commitment of the private sector for a rapid starting, RANWASH gave the priority based on the public market laws, which is provided equitably by the community management to the private management, which are existing in the different zones of interventions of the project, and to avoid the management of the community, which are not professional. And for that sake, we have put in place a management by a PPP management to ensure the sustainability of the investment and the management of those resources resulting to this approach. And as usual, the documents are available via this link and via the QR code. The first document is on the strategy of engagement of private sector to increase the use of wash surfaces. The second document is the validated process of the general directorates, and followed by the documents on procurement, but also the internal validation of the process inspired from the former documents, but also the tender for the team and the future intervention in the PPP, the document of call for tender, a checklist of the before launching of the project. This is to better manage and to acquire the documents and all necessary information for the implementation of those infrastructures before constructing all types of infrastructures. And this is very important to read this checklist filled out at the regional and national level. Here we have the call for manifestation and the model for private and public sector partnership, the type of contracts of fundings, which is important to land based on our experience for this sector, and you can adopt or adapt depending on your needs. And the contract of delegation of the management is also available on this link. And as we all know, based on this model that was proposed, that we can provide the last model of the ministry, thanks to the model provided by the Ministry of Water, Sanitation and Hygiene that has been done last week with the meeting room of UNICEF. And we are waiting for feedback from the ministry, central ministry. Otherwise, this document has been used for used by the other ministers. We also have the regulatory texts and other documents, and or the national guides for interventions on the PPP. So you can have different regulatory texts available in here. Since Ranwash cannot fund the needs on PPP in the other countries, so we can apply for Article 49 to encourage the private sector to invest spontaneously in communes that doesn't have in water supply services, but also can provide some resources, capital with beforehand studies of feasibility on environment and judiciary. So for that, we have to refer to the documents that were presented. Then you can see that it's not difficult. And we'd like to encourage the private sector who are ready, who have the willingness to invest and lend this contract of delegation to realize to implement some scale economy. And there are documents available on PPP Plus on the development of this kind of this PPP Plus. As usual, we have 6 documents that are shared related to the development of this regional fair on wash market, which are available on this QR code. And we have 5 documents on the application of the PPP Plus approach, which are available. Where we have the PPP Plus approach adopted by RANWASH, the type of addendum per contract of delegation of management of the PPP, which is available depending on the needs. We also have the addendum on the contract of initial management, which is available to you as well, and the checklist of the verification of the documents before signature of contract of PPP Plus. And that can help us to have all the documents, necessary documents, before signature of those contracts. And all those are available. The last sharing related to the private sector is on the spontaneous submission. You have the chance to receive model tools to guide us in the submission of spontaneous and that you can submit to the communes without partners via the letters of spontaneous call for spontaneous interest and the different step to stage for that sake and the general process. And all those tools are available to you in the development of this approach. And this approach was launched by the project and will not be stopped because the private sector, there are some private sector who had the chance to adopt that. And this is to increase the access to drinking water and allow us to reach SDG number 6 for the wash sector, but also for the Malagasy population before 2030. And this approach, the spontaneous submission, is very, very important to the reaching of that SDG. For us to better monitor the development of the PPP, it's very important to have at hand different tools for capacity building in marketing and entrepreneurship, and to have the technical and financial report on a quarterly basis, and work on the sensitization and resiliation of the contract of delegation for some sector. That is not systematic, but in the frame when it's mandatory and based on the law, a model is available, a document of reference is available because the different institutions are included, because here we are talking about the management of an enterprise, and everything should be done in conformity with the laws, the existing laws. These tools are available in the development of those activities. For technical assistance, lots of documents are being shared via this link, so you have the chance to specifically share thematic infrastructures in conformity with the environment. We'll have a presentation on this on Friday, and tomorrow, same time, you have the opportunity to receive tools related to marketing and entrepreneurship and the strategies of coverage of drinking water services. Tomorrow, same time, you'll have this presentation. And the technical and financial report on profit management would be shared to you via this link. And we also have the resiliation of the contract of the delegation is also available via the links and the QR code on the right hand side of the slide. The financial part and the market development and the linkages with those enterprises, we had a presentation with those different partners that are available via this link. The linkages with the investors and capital provider Amic and Solidis, and the business model presented by Ranwash during the different sessions with those enterprises working with Ranwash. And at that time, we had the opportunity to share information which are available on the Amic and Solidis websites, if need be. And by clicking the links, you can have the presentation provided by the two institutions. And apart from Amic and Solidis, we also have other potential partners ready to support the private sector during the implementation of the project. But we did not receive the presentation yet, which is Fiorina and the other initiatives. So before the last slide, you're going to receive our modules on capacity building. We have the training of the member of the CAO available on this link. This module was designed in Malagasy to enable the local understanding during the procurement in the communes with the manager, investor, and constructor. And for those, and this other module is for the trainers available via this link. The third link is on operation manual and maintenance for the water supply systems for the PPP, and this is for learners, trainees. And we also have the operation manual and maintenance for the trainers for water system, for water supply system for PPP. And this is the manual, and you have a link leading you to this. Let's go back to the presentation. We'll have documents that were designed within this project, like the aqua assistance training and aqua assistance training on hydraulic and drinking water, which was developed based on the local experience. And we worked with experts in this domain, water supply, water surface supply, from developed countries, and we had this opportunity to receive their experience via the partnership with Brainwash project, and also with those manager, investor, and constructor. We also have a sharing done by international team on information. We should not just remain with the expertise in Madagascar, but we had the opportunity to share our lesson learned with other countries, and they can also use the elements provided we gained from our own experience in the country, and those are available also. We can do, for example, cost comparison studies. So I'm going to click. So here's the tool, the comparative tool, cost comparative tool of treated water that we designed, and this would make it easy to sensitize on behavior change and the application of the cost approach in the perception of treated and non-treated water by using this tool. So this is all about the presentation of the tool that I shared with you. So please feel free for any questions related to the presentation. Thank you so much. We have 30 minutes of Q&A. If you have any questions related to my presentation, and which are linked to the development of PPP for water supply services. Maybe you don't have any more questions because you received the documents. I'd like to encourage you to use those documents to facilitate our future interventions. If you plan to adopt this approach, the PPP approach for water supply in rural areas. Morning. Community management transformed to private management via Brainwash. the community management transferring to private management was our first experience in the transformation of the management of PPP. It was the case of Saputen Zero, and there we tried to adopt this strategy because the state has put in place some investment, and for us not to lose those systems, we executed the scaling up of those systems and to target more beneficiaries through the rehabilitation and the extension of the systems, the reinforcement of the cartridge, from the cartridge to the distribution of the systems by improving the new methodology of management. And that is an instance of transformation of community management towards private management. And that is part of our approach of PPP from at the beginning of our first experimentation. The funding was from Ranwash by executing a co-funding of the project up to 80% at that time, and 10% brought up by the private sector by adopting this approach. We had a few investors to take over the management of those systems by the approach, the PPP approach. We have another participant for a question. Did you have a spontaneous submission? The answer is yes. I would say about 10, more than 10 cases of a spontaneous submission within this project, and more than 10 systems, and those were implemented through spontaneous submissions. We have at the reception, we had on the 10th of February, and today they are working on the extension over to Fukudan in the same commune, while putting in place a scale-up turnout because the private sector, the most dynamic private sector, have the chance to develop a spontaneous submission. There was also a case when the private sector did some extension via the PPP Plus, and that is in the frame of economic scale, and up to about 10 infrastructures. And we had lots of beneficiaries, and the PPP Plus, the managers with those contract of delegation decided to extend the contract towards two different zones, and the result of this PPP Plus is the management of the initial contract, changing the territory of intervention of the project via the manager, investor, and constructor, and by changing the costs or the period of investment depending on the investment on extension in different other territories. Mr. Diana Ratchapesan rose his hands. I don't know if you'd like to say something. Thank you. It was in relationship with the question how the community management was transformed into private management. Thank you. If there is no more question, thank you for your participation for this presentation, and I'd like to invite you again to participate in the different presentation by Ranwash this week until Friday,